In a small town filled with whispered prejudices and quiet judgments, Dr. Tom Baker's decision to adopt a young black boy named Liam turned more than a few heads. Known as a dedicated doctor and respected community figure, Tom's choice to give Liam a loving home didn't come without struggle, misunderstandings, and sometimes outright hostility. Facing not only the challenges of fatherhood but also the town's disapproval, Tom's commitment to Liam only deepened with each test of their bond. But years later, the very people who had once questioned Tom's decision found themselves in a desperate situation. Suddenly, they needed his help, and his son's courage more than they could ever have imagined. What could make an entire community set aside their doubts and turn to the very people they had once shunned? Stay tuned as we dive into this powerful story of love, resilience, and unexpected redemption. How did Tom's choice to open his heart change an entire town? And how did Liam's kindness show everyone what family truly means? Before we get into this heartwarming story, don't forget to like, share, and follow our channel to support us. Thank you so much for being here. As Dr. Tom Archer left St. Hope General Hospital after a grueling night shift, the cool evening breeze offered a momentary relief. He rubbed his temples, exhausted from the long hours. As he reached his car, a soft sound caught his attention. Frowning, he followed the faint, distressed cries until he found the source. A tiny bundle swaddled in a thin, worn blanket near the hospital's entrance. The sight stopped him in his tracks. Cautiously, he bent down and gently lifted the blanket to reveal a baby. A small, vulnerable infant with bright brown eyes and soft curls. The baby's cries softened as Tom held him, and a surge of protectiveness welled up inside him. Tom couldn't understand why someone would leave a baby in such a helpless state. As he held the child close, the little boy looked up at him, their eyes locking in an unspoken bond. "Oh, little one," Tom murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "What happened to you?" Feeling a sudden resolve, Tom carried the baby back into the hospital, signaling to the staff nearby. Nurses gathered around, taking the infant to conduct tests, and Tom paced in the waiting area, waiting anxiously for any updates. His thoughts raced. He had always wanted children, though his life as a doctor had left little room for family. But there was something about this child that stirred something deeper in him. Hours passed before a social worker arrived. She informed Tom that they would keep the baby safe for the night, but if no one claimed him, he would have to be placed into the foster system. At that, Tom's heart clenched. He could barely imagine this helpless baby being shuffled between strangers without stability or love. After a long pause, Tom finally spoke, his voice steady but full of emotion. "If no one claims him, I'll take him," he said with conviction. "I want to adopt him." The social worker raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Dr. Archer, are you sure? Adopting a child is a huge responsibility. It's never an easy decision, especially for a single man with a demanding job." Tom met her gaze with unwavering determination. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," he replied. "This little boy deserves a home, and I have the love to give him that." As he held the sleeping baby in his arms, Tom whispered, "I'll name you Liam." He gently brushed a thumb over the child's soft cheek. "Liam Archer, I promise to be there for you, always." When word got around about Tom's decision to adopt, it spread quickly through the town. Tom was known as one of the best surgeons, respected for his skill and dedication. His sudden choice to adopt a black child, however, sent ripples through the close-knit community. Among the first to react were Tom's own parents, Charles and Elaine Archer, who invited him over for a family dinner to discuss the unexpected turn of events. As Tom arrived at their house, he felt a knot of tension. He knew his parents, though well-meaning, might not understand his decision. Inside, the family's warm greetings were strained, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken concerns. His father cleared his throat, looking at Tom with a serious expression. "Son, we need to discuss this situation with the baby." Tom set down his fork, feeling the familiar swell of frustration. "His name is Liam, Dad. He's not a situation. He's my son." Elaine reached across the table, patting his hand gently. "Tom, honey, we're just concerned," she said softly. "Raising any child is hard, but a black child in this town? It's a difficult path, and we want to make sure you're fully prepared." Tom's sister, Claire, chimed in, her tone careful but worried. And with your demanding career, Tom, how can you possibly manage being a full-time parent? You're always on call at the hospital." Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their doubts but remaining resolute. "I know it won't be easy," he replied, his voice steady. "But Liam deserves a loving family, and I can provide that. I felt it the moment I saw him. He was meant to be my son." Charles shook his head, sighing. "Son, you've always been sensible, but it's not just about your feelings. People here might not accept this. You might lose their respect." "Respect?" Tom repeated, his voice rising slightly. "If my respect is dependent on turning my back on a child in need, then I don't want it. I'll find a way to make this work. Single parents do it every day." Elaine's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she clasped his hand tightly. "We just want what's best for you, Tom. Are you absolutely sure this is what you want?" Tom looked around the table, his expression firm. "Liam is my son. This is what I want, and I hope that you all will accept him as part of our family." Within days, Tom's decision became the talk of Willow Creek. He could feel the town's eyes following him wherever he went, especially in Mabel's diner, the heart of local gossip. On his usual morning stop for coffee, the normally warm greetings turned into hushed whispers and sideways glances. As he sat at the counter, he overheard a group of regulars murmuring at a nearby booth. "Did you hear about Dr. Archer? Adopting a black child," whispered Mrs. Stevens, a longtime resident. "What on earth could he be thinking?" Mr. Nelson, an older man sitting across from her, shook his head. "It's just not natural. A single white doctor adopts a black child. He's bound to bring trouble his way." Betty, the diner waitress, who'd known Tom for years, joined in. "Maybe he's going through something. Why else would he go and adopt a child, let alone a black one?" The din of quiet gossip filled the diner. While some patrons were content to just speculate, others were openly disapproving. As Tom listened to their whispers, he couldn't help but feel the sting of judgment. He'd spent his whole life in Willow Creek, and up until now, he had been one of its most respected figures. Now he was becoming the center of a controversy he never anticipated. The day wore on, and the reactions around town grew more obvious. One of the regular patients at the hospital, Mrs. Lyle, usually praised Tom for his medical skills whenever they met. Today, though, she crossed the street when she saw him, her eyes darting away as she muttered something under her breath. As Tom returned home that evening, Liam's soft coos in the nursery brought a momentary calm. But as he held his son, he wondered how he'd managed to shield him from the subtle prejudice of the town. Willow Creek was a place that valued familiarity and tradition, and anything that strayed outside those boundaries was met with suspicion. Over the next week, Tom's world was transformed by his new role as a father. Gone were the carefully planned schedules and precise routines that had once defined his life. Instead, his days and nights were punctuated by diaper changes, feedings, and rocking Liam back to sleep in the small hours. His once tidy home now carried a delightful chaos, filled with baby blankets and tiny bottles scattered about. But as fulfilling as these moments with Liam were, Tom soon realized the full scope of his challenges. During one of his shifts, as he was scrubbing in for surgery, he overheard a few colleagues whispering just outside the operating room. "I heard he adopted a black baby," one nurse murmured. "Can he really balance this kind of responsibility with the work we do?" Another colleague replied, "It's strange, isn't it? You'd think he'd focus on his career. I just hope it doesn't affect his concentration here." Tom tried to block out their words, but a pang of frustration lingered. He knew they doubted his decision, and worse, his ability to juggle work and fatherhood. But he couldn't allow himself to falter. Especially not now. Later that afternoon, as he finished his rounds, Tom's phone rang. It was Mrs. West, an elderly neighbor he trusted to watch Liam when he had to work. Her voice was full of concern as she said, "Tom, I think you need to come home. Liam's been crying non-stop, and I've tried everything." Without hesitation, he left the hospital, ignoring the disapproving looks from some colleagues. When he arrived, he found Mrs. West flustered and exhausted, rocking a red-faced Liam who was still wailing. "It's all right, Mrs. West," he reassured her. Taking Liam in his arms, he gently cradled his son and whispered soothing words until the cries softened. "Daddy's here, Liam, I've got you." The next day, Tom decided to take Liam for a walk through Willow Creek's main park, hoping to enjoy a quiet morning with his son. The crisp air and warm sun seemed perfect, and for a moment, all felt right in the world. But as they strolled along the winding path, a familiar voice called out. "Tom," said a woman's voice. He turned to see Mrs. Harper, one of his mother's friends, along with a few other townsfolk who were watching him and Liam with thinly veiled disapproval. "Dr. Archer," one man said, his tone sharp. "Isn't this a bit much? A baby, especially one so different from you." Tom's grip on the stroller tightened. He held back a sharp retort, choosing instead to address them calmly. "This is my son, and he's no different from any other child in need of love and care." Mrs. Harper frowned. "But Tom, you must understand, our town isn't used to things like this. Willow Creek isn't a place for this kind of change." Taking a steady breath, Tom replied, "What Liam needs is love, just like any child, and I'm going to be the best father I can for him. Isn't that what truly matters?" The small crowd exchanged uneasy glances but didn't press further. They watched in silence as Tom continued down the path, his resolve only growing stronger with each step. He looked down at Liam, who gurgled happily, blissfully unaware of the town's scrutiny. As they left the park, Tom silently vowed to give Liam a life filled with love and security, no matter what obstacles came their way. Tom's journey into fatherhood had brought unexpected challenges, and each day felt like a test of his patience, strength, and resolve. As he tried to balance his career and the demands of raising a young child, he began to feel the weight of the town's judgment more acutely. He could sense the unease of Willow Creek's residents with every sideways glance and whispered conversation. One evening, Tom's parents invited him over for a family dinner, their voices cautious over the phone. As he pulled up to the house he'd grown up in, he felt a mix of nostalgia and apprehension, knowing the conversation would inevitably turn to Liam. Inside, the atmosphere was strained as they gathered around the dining table. His mother, Grace, was the first to break the silence. "Tom, dear," she began, her voice soft but firm, "we need to talk about Liam." Tom looked up from his plate, meeting her worried gaze. "Is there something specific you're concerned about, Mom?" His father, George, cleared his throat and looked at Tom with a furrowed brow. "It's not that we don't support you, Tom, but we just don't understand why you take on such a responsibility, especially considering how different he is from you, from us." Tom felt his chest tighten. He took a deep breath before answering, trying to keep his tone calm. "Liam is my son now, and he needs a family, just like anyone else. This isn't about what's easy, Dad. It's about giving a child a home." Grace reached out to place her hand over his. "Honey, we know you're doing this out of love, but have you thought about how people in Willow Creek will treat him and you? It might not be easy for either of you." Tom nodded slowly, understanding his parents' concerns but remaining steadfast in his decision. "Mom, Dad, I know this won't be easy, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. I love him, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he feels accepted and loved." George sighed, his expression softening slightly. "Son, we've always wanted what's best for you. We just hope that Willow Creek will come to accept this and him." After dinner, Tom drove home with a heavy heart. He appreciated his parents' cautious support, but he could feel their hesitation lingering in the air. He wondered if the community he'd served and the family he loved would ever truly accept his decision. Back at home, he found himself in Liam's nursery, gently rocking his son to sleep. In the soft glow of the nightlight, he whispered, "I promise you, Liam, I'll always be here for you. You're my son, and nothing will ever change that." Days turned into weeks, and the once respected Dr. Archer continued to face skepticism and even outright disapproval from his neighbors. At the hospital, he noticed the shift in his colleagues' attitudes. Some were distant, and a few seemed openly judgmental. They questioned his ability to handle both fatherhood and his demanding job as a surgeon. One afternoon, as Tom was scrubbing in for surgery, he caught snippets of a conversation between two nurses just outside the operating room. "Do you really think he can handle this? Being a single dad to a black child?" one of them whispered. "He's one of the best surgeons we have," replied the other, but her voice was hesitant. "But still, it's different. Maybe he's trying to prove something." Tom clenched his fists, trying to block out their words. He had expected that raising Liam wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't foreseen the extent of the prejudice they'd face. He knew he'd have to stay strong, for both himself and his son. That same week, he received a call from Mrs. Wyatt, his elderly neighbor, who occasionally helped watch Liam while Tom worked. Her voice was filled with concern. "Dr. Archer, I think you should come home. Liam's been fussy all afternoon, and he won't stop crying. I've tried everything, but he just seems so distressed." Without hesitation, Tom dropped everything at the hospital, feeling the judgmental stares of his colleagues as he left mid-shift. When he arrived home, he found Mrs. Wyatt holding a red-faced, wailing Liam, who looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "It's all right, Mrs. Wyatt," he said, taking Liam into his arms. "Thank you for calling me." As he rocked Liam back and forth, whispering soothing words, the baby gradually calmed, snuggling into his chest and clutching his shirt with tiny hands. The world outside their quiet nursery seemed to disappear, replaced by the soft, steady rhythm of his son's breathing. Each time Tom looked into Liam's eyes, he felt a deep, unbreakable bond that only grew stronger with every passing day. This was his son. And nothing, no gossip, no judgment, could ever change that. A few weeks later, Tom decided to bring Liam to the park. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and the air was filled with the laughter of children and the hum of quiet conversations. Tom pushed Liam's stroller along the winding path, enjoying the fresh air after another grueling week at the hospital. As they approached the swings, he felt a strange tension settle over him. The families gathered there cast fleeting glances in his direction, some openly curious, others subtly disapproving. Tom forced himself to smile, trying to focus on the simple joy of being there with his son. Just then, he heard a voice call out, sharp and direct. "Well, if it isn't Dr. Archer and his little project," said Bill McGuire, one of the locals known for his blunt opinions. Tom felt his jaw tighten, but kept his expression steady as he turned to face Bill. "Good to see you too, Bill," he replied calmly, his hands gripping the stroller a little tighter. Bill didn't seem fazed by Tom's attempt to deflect. "You know, Dr. Archer," he continued, "I'm just saying what others are thinking. This town, it's not built for, well, situations like this." He gestured vaguely toward Liam as if Tom's son were somehow an issue to be solved. Tom felt a surge of frustration and pain at Bill's words. He forced himself to respond as calmly as he could, knowing he didn't want to create a scene for Liam to witness. "Bill, what my son needs, like any child, is a loving home, and I can give him that." Another mother nearby, Rachel, joined in. She was one of Tom's longtime patients and usually greeted him warmly, but today her face was a mix of concern and something else. "Tom, it's not that we don't support you, but have you considered how difficult this might be? For both of you?" He looked around at the small crowd that had formed, their expressions ranging from pity to thinly veiled judgment. He could see their concern, but also the underlying prejudice that kept them from seeing Liam as just a child in need of love. "I appreciate the concern," Tom replied, steadying his voice. "But Liam is my son, and he belongs here just as much as anyone else's child." The group fell silent, but Tom could feel the weight of their stares as he continued to push Liam's stroller toward the playground. His heart ached, but he held his head high. He was determined to prove, both to himself and to everyone else, that his love for Liam was stronger than their doubts and fears. Later that evening, Tom returned home, exhausted and weighed down by the events of the day. As he prepared Liam's bottle, he couldn't help but think of all the conversations that had taken place around him. For the first time, he felt the true depth of the challenge they were facing in Willow Creek. That night, as he tucked Liam into his crib, he found himself whispering a promise. "I'll always stand by you, Liam, no matter what anyone says. You're my son, and nothing will ever change that." But the weeks that followed didn't get any easier. Tom's colleagues began to question his dedication to the job. One afternoon, his supervisor, Dr. Perkins, pulled him aside after surgery. "Tom," she began, her voice steady but firm, "I've noticed you've been distracted lately. It's understandable, given the new responsibilities you've taken on, but we can't afford any lapses here. Lives are at stake." Tom swallowed, feeling the familiar knot of stress tighten in his stomach. He had been working late into the night after getting Liam to sleep, and the exhaustion was catching up with him. But hearing doubt from his supervisor stung more than he'd expected. "I understand, Dr. Perkins," he replied, trying to mask the weariness in his voice. "I'm committed to my work and to my patients." She gave him a long, searching look. "I hope so, Tom. I know you're a dedicated surgeon, but you have to find a balance. This situation can't interfere with your responsibilities." As she walked away, Tom felt the heavy weight of isolation press down on him. He had always been respected in his field, but now it seemed his colleagues only saw the challenges he faced as a single father of a child they considered different. Determined to stay strong, Tom threw himself into work and fatherhood with renewed intensity, but he knew he couldn't keep this pace forever. One evening, as Tom and Liam were finishing dinner, there was a knock on the door. He opened it to find David, his best friend from medical school, standing there with a cautious smile. "Thought I'd drop by and check on you two," David said, his voice warm but tinged with concern. Tom invited him in, grateful for the company. They sat in the living room, Liam toddling around with his toys nearby. "So, how are you holding up?" David asked, his tone soft but probing. Tom sighed, his shoulders slumping. "It's been harder than I expected. The town, my colleagues, they're not exactly supportive. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I didn't expect this much resistance." David nodded thoughtfully. "I won't lie, Tom, I had my doubts too. I still wonder how you're going to manage, but I can see that you're doing this out of love, and Liam's lucky to have you." As they talked, Tom felt a flicker of relief. David's support, even if cautious, was a reminder that he wasn't entirely alone. There were people who saw his commitment to Liam, even if they didn't fully understand it. After David left, Tom looked over at Liam, who was now dozing off on the rug, clutching a small teddy bear. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was willing to face it, for Liam and for the love they shared. The next morning, as Tom prepared to take Liam to daycare, he received an unexpected call from his parents. "Tom," his mother's voice was cautious, "we'd like to talk. Maybe over dinner?" Though hesitant, Tom agreed. His parents had been distant since he'd adopted Liam, struggling to come to terms with his choice. As he hung up the phone, he prepared himself for what he expected to be a difficult evening. When he arrived at his parents' house, the tension was palpable. Dinner was quiet, with only the clinking of silverware filling the silence. Finally, Tom's father, Robert, spoke up, his voice thick with concern. "Son, we're worried about you. We want to make sure you're thinking clearly about this situation." Tom's jaw clenched slightly as he placed his fork down, bracing himself. "By situation, I assume you mean my son?" he replied, his tone steady, but laced with frustration. Robert sighed, clearly struggling to find the right words. "It's not that we don't want you to be happy, Tom, but raising a child like Liam in this town, it's going to be hard on both of you. We're concerned for his future and yours." His mother, Margaret, reached across the table to pat his hand, her eyes filled with worry. "Tom, we know you're a wonderful doctor and a good man, but raising a child is a big responsibility, and you're already working long hours." Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his family's judgment. "I understand your concerns," he replied slowly. "But Liam needs me. I made a promise to him, and I intend to keep it. No matter what anyone thinks, I know that I can be the father he deserves." Silence settled over the table again, and his parents exchanged a glance that was a mix of resignation and lingering concern. His father finally nodded, though his expression was tense. "We'll try to understand, Tom. For your sake." After dinner, Tom left feeling drained. The weight of his family's disapproval weighed heavily on his shoulders, but he was more determined than ever to prove that his love for Liam was unwavering. The following week, Tom noticed that the stares and whispers had only intensified around town. Friends who once greeted him warmly now offered awkward nods or looked away entirely. Even some of his patients, who had once praised him for his expertise, seemed to view him with quiet suspicion. One morning at the hospital, he was stopped by Dr. Grayson, an older doctor who had always been a mentor to him. "Tom," Dr. Grayson began, his voice a mix of disappointment and concern, "I've heard a lot about your decision. Are you sure this is what's best for you and your career?" Tom's chest tightened. He respected Dr. Grayson, but the older man's words stung deeply. With all due respect, Dr. Grayson, my personal life doesn't affect my commitment to my work. I'm doing what I believe is right. Dr. Grayson hesitated, then placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. I know you're dedicated, but this town, it's slow to accept change. I just want you to be prepared for what lies ahead. Tom nodded, though inside, he felt a mix of anger and sadness. Even those he admired struggled to see past their own prejudices, but he was determined to prove them wrong. That night, Tom found himself pacing his living room, the weight of the day pressing down on him. As he looked down at Liam, who was playing contentedly on the floor, he felt a surge of pride. This little boy had become his world, and he was willing to face any challenge to ensure Liam's happiness. "Hey, buddy," Tom said softly, crouching down beside Liam. "Things may be tough now, but I promise you, we'll make it through together." Liam looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes and offered Tom one of his small toys. Tom's heart swelled as he accepted the gift, knowing that this love they shared was worth every challenge. Bookmark go back. Over the next few weeks, the weight of being a single father and a dedicated surgeon began to take its toll. Tom's nights were spent balancing feedings and late-night diaper changes, while his days were filled with surgeries and patient care. His exhaustion was visible, and it didn't go unnoticed by his colleagues. One afternoon, Tom was called into Dr. Perkins's office. She regarded him with a look of concern. "Tom, I know you're trying to juggle everything, but I'm worried about you. You're stretched too thin." Tom looked down, feeling the exhaustion settle in his bones. He knew she was right, but he couldn't see any other way. "I'm doing my best, Dr. Perkins. Liam needs me, and so do my patients. I just have to find a way to make it work." She nodded, her face softening. "I admire your dedication, but please don't forget to take care of yourself too." As Tom left her office, he felt a strange mix of gratitude and frustration. He appreciated her concern, but he was painfully aware of how few people truly understood the challenges he was facing. Every day felt like an uphill battle, but he reminded himself that every struggle was worth it for Liam. That night, after putting Liam to bed, Tom sat alone in the quiet house, reflecting on everything he had endured. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was willing to face it because Liam was worth every ounce of sacrifice. With a renewed sense of determination, he made a silent vow to himself. He would not only be the father Liam deserved, but also the man who showed his community that love could triumph over prejudice and judgment. As Liam grew older, he began to notice the subtle ways that others treated him differently. One sunny afternoon, Tom took Liam to a nearby park, hoping for a break from the mounting pressures of work and parenthood. While Liam played on the swings, Tom watched from a distance, feeling a brief sense of relief. But as Liam ran towards a group of kids his age, Tom noticed something unsettling. The other children pulled away, forming a circle that subtly shut Liam out. Tom's heart sank as he watched Liam's face fall, confusion and sadness flashing in his eyes as he tried to join their game. Determined to remain calm, Tom walked over and knelt beside his son, offering him a comforting smile. "Hey Liam, how about we play on the slides together? Just you and me?" Liam hesitated, his eyes flickering between Tom and the group of children who were now laughing amongst themselves, oblivious to his hurt. "Why don't they want to play with me, Dad?" Liam's small voice was filled with an innocence that made Tom's heart ache. Tom took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes people don't understand things that are different, Liam, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. You're an amazing kid, and you have a dad who loves you more than anything." Liam gave a small nod, a hint of a smile returning as he held tightly to Tom's hand. They spent the rest of the afternoon playing together, and for a few precious hours Tom could see the joy returning to Liam's face. It reminded him why he was fighting so hard for moments like these, where love and joy overshadowed the judgment they faced. Later that evening, Tom received an unexpected visitor, David, his childhood friend, who had been a distant yet supportive presence since Tom adopted Liam. David's face held a look of hesitation as he stepped into the house, glancing around at the cozy space filled with Liam's toys and drawings. "Tom," David began, his tone tentative, "I wanted to check on you. It seems like things have been tough lately." Tom forced a small smile. "It's been an adjustment, but Liam is worth every second of it." David nodded, but a flicker of doubt remained in his eyes. Look, Tom, I know you love him, and I admire your dedication. But this town isn't the most open-minded place. Have you thought about what this means for Liam as he grows up? Tom's smile faded as he studied his friend's concerned expression. He appreciated David's honesty, but the conversation stung. Every day, Tom replied quietly. But I refuse to give up on him just because it's hard. He deserves a family that loves him, and I'll make sure he gets that, no matter what anyone else thinks. David hesitated, then placed a reassuring hand on Tom's shoulder. I know you'll do right by him, and if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. As David left, Tom felt a mixture of gratitude and isolation. Though he appreciated his friend's support, he was painfully aware of how few people truly understood the depth of his commitment to Liam. That night, as he tucked Liam into bed, Tom made a silent vow. He would not allow the judgments of others to rob Liam of the love and security he deserved. Liam was his son, and Tom would give everything to protect him. The next morning, Tom received an unexpected call from the principal of Liam's school. Mr. Blake. The principal's voice was sympathetic but firm. We've been experiencing some challenges with Liam's classmates. Some parents have expressed concerns. Tom's grip tightened on the phone, a surge of frustration bubbling up inside him. Concerns about what exactly? The principal paused, and Tom could almost hear her weighing her words carefully. Well, it seems that some of the children are having a hard time understanding Liam's background. They're not used to seeing different family structures. Tom took a steadying breath, his heart aching for Liam. My son deserves to feel welcome, just like any other child. He shouldn't have to pay the price for other people's narrow-mindedness. I understand, Mr. Blake, the principal replied, her voice softening. And we're doing our best to address the issue with the other families, but I wanted to let you know that it may take time. Tom hung up the phone, frustration gnawing at him. He knew that standing up for Liam was just the beginning of a much longer battle, one he was willing to fight with everything he had. That evening, Tom took Liam on a walk through their neighborhood. The fresh air and change of scenery were a welcome distraction from the stress of the day. As they passed by the houses, Tom noticed the stares of a few neighbors, some looking away quickly, while others watched with barely concealed disapproval. At one point, Liam looked up at him, his young face filled with curiosity. Why do people look at us like that, Dad? Tom's heart ached at the innocence in his son's question. He knelt down to Liam's level, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Sometimes people don't understand families like ours, Liam. But remember, the love we have is stronger than any of those looks or whispers. Liam smiled, reassured by Tom's words, and squeezed his hand tightly. At that moment, Tom knew that he would endure every stare, every whisper, every challenge, if it meant giving Liam the security of a father's unwavering love. As they continued their walk, Tom found himself strengthened by Liam's resilience. Despite the challenges they faced, they had each other, and that was enough to keep them going, no matter what lay ahead. The weeks passed, and despite the challenges, Tom and Liam's bond only deepened. Tom marveled at how resilient Liam was, how he managed to keep his bright smile and curiosity, even as the whispers and judgments in their small town grew louder. It seemed that every day brought a new test, but Liam faced each one with an innocence and strength that inspired Tom to keep going. One afternoon, Tom picked Liam up from school, noticing a troubled look on his son's face as he climbed into the car. Liam's usual chatter was absent, replaced by a quiet stare out the window. After a few moments, Tom gently asked, "Rough day, buddy?" Liam nodded, fiddling with his backpack strap. "Some kids, they said mean things again, Dad. They told me I didn't belong." Tom's heart tightened. Every time Liam faced this, it hurt even more than the last, knowing that his young son was being hurt by the ignorance and prejudice around them. He pulled the car over, turning to face Liam, his voice calm but firm. "Liam, I need you to know something. People say hurtful things when they don't understand. But you, my boy, you belong with me. You belong here, just as much as anyone else." Liam's eyes searched Tom's face, and a small smile returned. "You really think so, Dad?" Tom nodded, his voice filled with conviction. "Absolutely. You're brave and kind, and you're going to make a difference in this world, no matter what anyone says. And I'll be right here, cheering you on. Later that night, after Liam had gone to bed, Tom sat alone in the living room, his thoughts heavy. The endless judgment from the town and the isolation he and Liam felt, it was beginning to wear on him. But as he looked around the room filled with reminders of Liam, drawings taped to the walls, and toys scattered across the floor, Tom felt a renewed sense of purpose. The whispers and disapproval would not define their story. Tom knew he would do whatever it took to provide Liam with the love, stability, and opportunities he deserved, even if that meant facing the community's criticism head-on. The next day, Tom visited Liam's school and requested a meeting with the principal and a few teachers. Sitting across from them, he laid out his concerns, calmly but firmly, detailing the way Liam had been treated by other students and how it had been impacting him. "I'm not here to blame anyone," Tom began, his tone controlled yet resolute. "But this needs to change. Liam has the right to feel safe and accepted in his own school. If that means having conversations with parents, with students, whatever it takes, I want to help make that happen." The principal nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Blake, I understand your concerns, and I agree. This school should be a place of inclusion and understanding. I'll organize a community meeting and a workshop to educate parents and children about respecting others, no matter their background." Grateful, Tom shook her hand, feeling hopeful for the first time in a while. If the school could foster an environment of respect, perhaps the rest of the community would follow suit. For Liam's sake, he was willing to push as far as needed. That weekend, Tom took Liam to a larger city nearby to get away from the tension at home and give his son a break from the daily struggles. The bustling streets, vibrant shops, and the sight of diverse families laughing and enjoying each other's company lifted both their spirits. They spent the day exploring, a trip to a science museum, a lunch at a small family-owned restaurant, and a walk through a park where Liam marveled at the colorful flowers and watched ducks swimming in the pond. Watching his son's face light up with joy and curiosity, Tom felt a surge of pride and gratitude. At one point, Liam turned to Tom, his eyes wide with wonder. "Dad, why don't we see people like this at home? People who look different from each other?" Tom considered his words carefully. "Well, sometimes people in smaller towns aren't as open to change. They get used to seeing things a certain way and get a little uncomfortable with things they don't know. But there are so many wonderful people out there. People who are kind and accepting." Liam nodded, seeming to understand. "I like it here. Everyone just looks happy." Tom smiled, reaching out to ruffle Liam's hair. "You know, you make me happy every day, kiddo, just by being you." The city trip seemed to rekindle something in Liam, a confidence that had been fading under the weight of the town's judgments. As they drove back home that evening, Liam chatted non-stop about everything he had seen and learned. Tom felt a renewed sense of hope, determined to create that same feeling of acceptance in their own town. The next week, as promised, the school held a meeting for parents, teachers, and community members. Tom attended, ready to speak up for Liam and all the children who faced unnecessary prejudice. As he looked around the room, he saw faces filled with tension, confusion, and even disapproval. But he also saw glimmers of understanding in a few familiar faces, neighbors who had watched Liam grow, a couple of parents who had occasionally offered him words of encouragement. When it was Tom's turn to speak, he took a deep breath and addressed the room. "I know not everyone understands my decision to adopt Liam, but what I want most is for him to be accepted, to feel that he belongs. We have a chance to make this community a place of acceptance, not only for my son, but for everyone." After he finished, the room was silent, and for a moment, Tom worried his words had fallen flat. But then, one by one, a few people nodded, murmuring words of agreement. The principal thanked him for his courage, and as the meeting adjourned, several parents approached him, offering their support and gratitude for speaking up. Though the journey was far from over, Tom felt a glimmer of hope as he walked out of the school that night. Change was slow, but it was possible. And as long as he had Liam by his side, he would keep fighting for a world where his son could walk freely and proudly, just as he was. In the following months, Tom saw a gradual shift in the way people interacted with him and Liam. Though it was subtle, he noticed fewer stares and more nods or polite greetings. Some parents even encouraged their children to include Liam in their games, and the school's new initiative began to foster a spirit of understanding among the students. While Willow Creek was far from perfect, Tom felt encouraged by these small changes. One evening, Tom received an invitation to a town hall event. The flyer mentioned that the gathering was to discuss the importance of diversity and acceptance in Willow Creek, specifically highlighting the role parents play in fostering open-mindedness in their children. Reading the invitation, Tom felt a mix of pride and apprehension, unsure how the community would handle such a discussion. He glanced over at Liam, who was busy working on a school project, and realized just how much this conversation was needed. The night of the town hall meeting arrived, and Tom sat among a crowd of familiar faces. He felt a wave of nerves as the town council opened the meeting, talking about the benefits of diversity and the importance of building an inclusive community. They highlighted some of the challenges people in the community might face, gently emphasizing that each of their children, no matter their backgrounds, deserved respect and kindness. As the council opened the floor for personal stories, one woman stood up, hesitating before she spoke. "I just wanted to say that seeing Tom raise Liam has shown me something important," she began, looking down at her hands. "I didn't understand it at first, but it made me realize I was raising my own kids to fear things just because they were unfamiliar. And that's on me. I owe Tom and Liam an apology." Tom was taken aback by her honesty, and as she finished speaking, he gave her an encouraging nod of gratitude. Her words seemed to break the ice, and one by one, others began sharing their own realizations. Some parents admitted they had discouraged their children from befriending Liam, thinking it would spare them from hardship. Others spoke about their desire to see Willow Creek grow beyond its prejudices and stereotypes. Finally, the council invited Tom to the front. Nervous but resolute, he stepped forward, his gaze sweeping the room. "Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Liam and I didn't come here looking for special treatment or attention. We simply wanted to be part of this community." Tom took a breath, then continued, "Raising Liam has been the greatest privilege of my life. He's my son in every way that matters, and he deserves to feel safe and accepted, just like any other child here." The room was silent as Tom spoke, and he could see a mixture of shame and resolve in the faces before him. "It hasn't been easy," he admitted, his voice softening, "but I believe in the goodness of people. I know that most of you want the best for your children, and all I ask is that you help create a community that reflects that. Not just for my son, but for everyone." When he finished, a few people began clapping, followed by others until the entire room was applauding. For the first time, Tom felt like he was truly being seen and heard, not just as Liam's father, but as an integral part of the community. Following the town hall, Willow Creek began to transform in small but meaningful ways. The school continued its anti-bullying campaign, and the town council organized monthly gatherings where residents could come together, share their stories, and build connections. Over time, Tom noticed that Liam seemed more at ease, his confidence growing as he made new friends who accepted him for who he was. One weekend, Tom and Liam went to the town's annual spring festival. It was the first time in years that Tom felt comfortable enough to attend such an event with Liam, knowing they were no longer the subjects of whispers and judgment. They wandered among the booths, played games, and ate more cotton candy than either could handle. As they made their way to the park, Liam ran into a few classmates who invited him to join their soccer game. Tom watched as his son ran off with a grin, his laughter filling the air as he played with the other children. The sight filled Tom with a mix of pride and gratitude. Moments like these had once seemed impossible. After a while, one of the other parents approached Tom. It was Mr. Harris, the father of a boy who had previously taunted Liam at school. He held out a hand, a hesitant smile on his face. "Tom, I owe you an apology. I was wrong about a lot of things. It took seeing my own kids struggle to understand what you've been dealing with. I hope we can move forward and make things right." Tom shook his hand, feeling the weight of past grievances lighten. "Thank you, Mr. Harris. That means a lot. Moving forward is all I want." That evening, as Tom and Liam walked home under the stars, Liam looked up at his father, his face beaming with happiness. "Dad, today was the best day ever. I have so many friends now, and I didn't feel different at all." Tom wrapped an arm around Liam's shoulders, his heart full. "I'm glad, buddy. You deserve every bit of happiness." Liam's smile turned thoughtful. "Maybe one day, we'll be able to help someone else feel the same way." Tom looked down, his chest swelling with pride at the compassionate young man Liam was becoming. "I think you're absolutely right, son, and I can't wait to see all the wonderful things you're going to do." As they walked down the quiet street, Tom felt a profound sense of peace. Despite the struggles they had faced, he knew they had found a place in the world where they belonged. The road ahead still held challenges, but with the strength of their bond and the support of a slowly evolving community, Tom and Liam knew they could face anything that came their way. In the months following the spring festival, Tom and Liam's lives became intertwined with Willow Creek in new and meaningful ways. Tom was invited to participate in a community initiative to mentor young boys in the area. The program was designed to provide support and guidance for children who needed positive role models, especially those facing unique challenges. It was an opportunity Tom couldn't turn down. It was his chance to pay forward the support he and Liam had finally started to receive. Each week, Tom would spend an hour mentoring a small group of kids, sharing lessons he had learned along the way. Many of the boys had already heard of Tom's journey with Liam and saw him as a symbol of strength and kindness. He focused on teaching them the importance of empathy, the strength found in kindness, and the courage it took to stand up for others. One day, Tom brought Liam to one of these meetings. The other boys listened, captivated, as Liam shared his own experiences of finding confidence despite being different from others. "It used to be hard," Liam admitted, his voice clear and steady. "But I learned that there's nothing wrong with being different, and sometimes being different helps you see things in ways other people can't." One of the younger boys raised his hand, looking at Liam with wide, curious eyes. "Do you think I could be as brave as you one day?" he asked. Liam grinned and nodded confidently. "I know you can. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It just means you do the right thing, even if you are." Tom watched as Liam continued sharing his thoughts with the group, his heart swelling with pride. Liam's courage and kindness were shaping the young boy into an incredible person, and Tom knew that Willow Creek was slowly beginning to see the special light his son carried. He realized that in many ways, Liam was already becoming the role model Tom hoped he'd have one day. As the mentorship program grew, Tom noticed an unexpected development within the community. Some of the parents who had once held reservations about him and Liam began to reach out for advice on raising empathetic and open-minded children. Though the conversations were often brief, Tom could sense a genuine desire to change, and he welcomed the opportunity to help foster that growth in the town. By the end of the school year, Willow Creek had come a long way. The school held a special assembly to celebrate the year's progress and invited Tom to speak. Taking the stage, he looked out at a room filled with familiar faces, many of whom had once looked at him with judgment and disdain. He took a deep breath, preparing to share his gratitude for the journey they had taken together. "I want to thank you all for this incredible year," Tom began, his voice steady. "There was a time when I felt like Liam and I would always be on the outside looking in. But thanks to the kindness and openness so many of you have shown, Willow Creek has truly started to feel like home." As he spoke, he noticed some of the teachers and parents dabbing at their eyes, touched by the sincerity of his words. "My son, Liam, has taught me so much about courage and resilience, and I am proud to be his father every single day. I hope that together we can continue to make Willow Creek a place where every child feels safe, supported, and valued." When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Tom glanced at Liam, who was beaming with pride from his seat in the front row. Liam's teachers and classmates all congratulated him, making him feel like he belonged as an important part of the school and the town itself. Later that evening, Tom and Liam sat together on their porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The golden light cast a warm glow over their quiet street, and for the first time in years, Tom felt completely at peace. "Dad," Liam began, his voice full of excitement, "do you think I could be a mentor one day, like you?" Tom turned to his son, smiling. "I think you already are, Liam. Just by being yourself, you're showing other kids that it's okay to be different. That's one of the bravest things anyone can do." Liam's eyes shone with a quiet pride, and he leaned his head against his father's shoulder. "I'm glad you're my dad. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world." Tom wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. "And I wouldn't trade you for anything, either. You're my greatest gift, Liam." They sat together in contented silence, letting the warmth of the moment sink in. Tom thought back on the many challenges they'd faced, the whispers, the stares, the struggles, and felt nothing but gratitude for how far they had come. They had built a life filled with purpose and love, stronger for having faced those challenges together. The quiet sounds of Willow Creek surrounded them, mingling with the chirping of crickets and the gentle rustling of leaves. Tom knew that, no matter what the future held, he and Liam had created a bond that would carry them through. And in a town that had once seemed like a lonely place, they had found a family among friends. In the weeks that followed, Tom and Liam continued their journey as a family and as active members of the Willow Creek community. The mentorship program Tom helped start was blossoming, and Liam found himself growing into a role he'd never expected, that of a young leader. His schoolmates began looking to him as a friend who could understand their struggles, and they often turned to him for advice, encouragement, or just a friendly ear. One afternoon, as Tom was picking Liam up from school, he noticed a boy standing by the gate, looking uncertain and alone. Recognizing him as one of the children who had initially given Liam a hard time, Tom glanced at his son, wondering if Liam would acknowledge the boy or walk on by. But Liam's face lit up with a kind smile, and he waved the boy over. They walked together to the car, talking and laughing as if they'd been friends forever. Seeing this, Tom felt a deep sense of pride. Despite the challenges Liam had faced, he was growing up to be someone with a kind heart and an understanding spirit. Tom knew that some of this transformation was due to Liam's own resilience, but it was also because the community had started to accept them both and show genuine support. As Liam settled into his new role, Tom found that people around town were gradually beginning to open up to him as well. Some who had once shunned him now approached him to ask for advice on family matters, or simply to share stories of their own children's lives. The townspeople, who had once kept their distance, now seemed to see him as a part of the community, and Tom cherished every moment of this newfound acceptance. One evening, while Tom and Liam were enjoying a quiet dinner at Mabel's diner, the door opened, and in walked Mr. Johnson, one of the men who had been most vocal in his disapproval of Tom's adoption of Liam. Tom felt a familiar pang of anxiety, but forced a polite smile as Mr. Johnson approached their table. "Tom," Mr. Johnson said, his tone softer than Tom had ever heard it. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" Tom nodded, gesturing for him to sit. As they spoke, Mr. Johnson opened up in a way that took Tom by surprise. "You know, Tom," he began, his voice filled with regret, "I used to think I knew what was best for this town and for my family, but seeing what you've done, the way you've raised Liam, and the positive impact you both have had here, it's made me realize how wrong I was. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Tom looked at Mr. Johnson, feeling a wave of emotions rise up. He nodded, his heart softening as he replied, "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. It means a lot. I'm just glad that Liam and I could make a difference." Mr. Johnson reached out and shook Tom's hand. In that handshake, Tom felt the weight of years of misunderstanding fall away, replaced by a mutual respect that he hadn't thought possible. As winter turned to spring, Willow Creek held its annual Founders' Day celebration. Tom was invited to give a speech at the town square, where he shared the story of his journey with Liam and expressed his gratitude for the community's support. He spoke of the changes they had seen together, the acceptance and kindness that had grown out of the challenges they'd faced. The crowd listened intently, moved by the words of a man they had come to respect and admire. As Tom finished, Liam joined him on stage, and the crowd erupted into applause. Liam looked out at the familiar faces, seeing in them a warmth and acceptance that had once seemed like an impossible dream. Afterward, many townspeople approached them to express their appreciation. Mrs. Thompson, who had once objected to Liam's presence in the school, hugged them both, tears in her eyes as she expressed her gratitude for all they had taught the town about family and love. That evening, Tom and Liam returned home feeling a sense of completeness that filled them with peace. They had not only found their place in Willow Creek, they had helped to shape it into a more open-hearted and inclusive community. As the years passed, Tom continued his work as a mentor in the town, while Liam grew into a young man determined to make a difference. He excelled in his studies, driven by a desire to help others, just as his father had helped him. When it came time for him to graduate, the entire town turned out to celebrate, proud of the boy who had once been seen as an outsider but had grown to be one of their own. At his graduation ceremony, Liam gave a heartfelt speech, thanking his father and the community for teaching him about acceptance, love, and resilience. His words were met with thunderous applause, and Tom felt his heart swell with pride. Years later, as Liam left for college with dreams of studying community leadership, Tom knew he had done something right. He had raised a young man who would continue to carry the spirit of Willow Creek with him, inspiring others to embrace acceptance, kindness, and understanding. Together, Tom and Liam had not only found a family in each other, but had helped to transform an entire town. As Liam hugged his father one last time before leaving for his next adventure, they both knew that the bond they shared would forever be a source of strength, not only for them but for the community they had helped to shape. In the end, Willow Creek had changed them as much as they had changed it, and that was something Tom would cherish for the rest of his days. Thank you for reading their story. If it moved you, let us know in the comments by pressing 1, and if you found it truly inspiring, press 2, and share it with someone who could use a bit of hope and encouragement. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales just like this one.